Hello, everybody. We're going to be going through the syllabus tonight for the Programming in Python course. Welcome to spring semester 2022. This is our first night of class. Tonight is Thursday, January 20th. This class will be ending on April 21st, which is also a Thursday, 14 weeks from tonight. 14 weeks goes pretty darn quick. In fact, we used to do 16-week semesters. They trimmed them down to 15, and when the pandemic kicked in, they decided to go to a 14-week format. And so we are effectively trying to squeeze in the same amount of materials that we used to do in 16 weeks into 14 weeks, and you guys should know that. So it has some impact on how we offer the course, which you'll see as we kind of move forward. It is spring semester 2022. Our course and section numbers are listed right up here at the top. And this is what we call a stacked course, very common, especially in the web and data programs, where we have online offerings and face-to-face offerings put together. And I'm hoping and praying right now that there's nobody that went to campus thinking they're going to walk into room 110 and join class. I did put out enough announcements, and I think most of you got the memo, obviously, because most of you are here. We do have what we call a full section. So all 20 seats for the section are filled. And in fact, I think we even allowed one extra person to register. So I think we're at 21. The sessions that you are attending, whether if you're coming to sign up for in-person or for Zoom, you are required to be there every week. It is not optional to come to class. That's not the kind of class you signed up for. In the web program, it is important to note that we do have courses that we mark as asynchronous, which is also online, which has no meeting days and times. You just follow along by video and work on your own. And believe it or not, in the web program, as you get to the tail end of the program, about 80% of our students take their classes in that format. And most likely you will at some point too. For many people, they just prefer the face-to-face experience, and I totally get it. I prefer that too. So I like to see real people. I like to talk to people. I like to see reactions. Karen, thank you for reacting to everything I say. I appreciate it. It shows me that at least I'm reaching one person in the class. So it's kind of like that. So, but there is research that shows that some people are really effective at working on their own with no others around and no distractions, and you can put a book in front of them or give them a video or something, give them a step-by-step, and they can do it, right? Other people need a little help, and it's not because they're dumb. It's just because they have a different learning style, right? And what we try to do here at Gateway is accommodate all of those learning styles. One thing you will see at Gateway is we are what we call a do-it school. And I contrast that to how my own education was when I went to school. When I was learning computer science, we had what we called lecture and lab. So like 2 days a week, you'd go to the lecture and, you take notes and get this, you take a programming class. There's no computers in class, no laptops, no PowerPoints. It was all like chalkboard and pencil and paper. And the teacher would write code on the chalkboard and you jot it down in your notebook. And then on the lab days, you'd run to the lab. Hopefully you get a computer that was open, you type it in, and good luck, right? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, right? Very different from what we're going to do here. In fact, most of the time that we're going to spend in class is going to be functionally doing the coding that you're going to be assigned. So in other words, we're going to be working through all the homework during class time, right? And so if you want to get the homework complete, come to class every week and follow along. That's really kind of what it's going to take. I will have lecturing that I do, but typically as we get into the meat of the course, the lecturing and the reading will happen on your own time before you come to class. When we get to class, we dive into the code. And so we will very actively be doing coding in class. So we will be doing exactly what you're here to learn. Now, of course, I do pepper in, lecturing as I do that. And I do find it a very effective approach for teaching this type of material. So you can really kind of look at the way that we do the class sessions as kind of a tutorial style approach to learning programming. There's challenges where you can figure it out on your own, but for the most part, I will guide you through every step and make sure that everything is working for you. All you have to do is show up. I mean, what a great deal is that, right? All right, so let's kind of continue on the syllabus path here. The face-to-face portion of this class is called blended, technically, and I do want to explain what that means. That normally means that this class, if offered in a regular college format, would take 4 hours per week in the classroom. You guys will notice that we're only doing 2. The other 2 will be online, whether you're face-to-face or in Zoom. That's where you watch the videos, read the book, try to do the exercises, or whatever research you have to do on your own. And then you come to class prepared to plow through the coding, right? And that approach is also called a flipped classroom. That's just kind of a personal preference I've had for many years. And I use it because I see it's very effective. Now, the online people, so the people that signed up for the 3WY1 section, that would be this one here, is what we call online synchronous, which equates to Zoom. And the Zoom and the face-to-face both happen at the same time, which is wonderful because that way, if we have a situation where, let's say, like I said before, your car breaks down, I can't make it to school, right? Well, just hop on Zoom, you're fine, we got you, right? And I think that's just wonderful that you have that opportunity. Also, if you get sick of sitting at home all by yourself, hey, come on down to the classroom. Our classroom at the IMET campus is super cool. The facilities there are so modern. It is probably the coolest of all the Gateway facilities. We're right next door to the Sim Lab, across the hall from the 3D printing lab. We have robots and machinery and servers, and oh my God, there's so many flashing lights in that building. It's very impressive. And even if you just come by once just to visit and meet me in person, that would be wonderful. The IMET campus, for those of you coming in person 2 weeks from now or wanting to come at any point, is located in Sturtevant, basically directly under the Sturtevant Water Tower on Highway H, just south of 20. So if you know where the movie theater are on Highway 20 and H, you just take that road down, it curves back, and there's Gateway. And that's where the IMET campus is. So we're not at the downtown Racine campus. Now, the reason that is because this section of Python is really designed for our data analytics students in the spring. And I know some of you are that. But normally, if you're a web student, almost all of your classes will be at the Racine downtown campus if you're coming to campus. And we have a whole floor of the technical building reserved there. In fact, you'll notice here that T312 refers to the technical building at the Racine campus. So if you were ever to visit me in person, that's where I'm located for my office. I will tell you that I am rarely there, so it's always good to make an appointment rather than just stop in. But you can also meet with me on Zoom, which a lot of people prefer. Kind of moving on to the course information now. We're here to learn what arguably is, the programming language that probably has the most legs right now. And what I mean by that is Python has grown in both importance and popularity over the last 10 years, especially. For a lot of different reasons. First of all, it's a very easy language to learn. It's a great first programming language. It can be used for doing what we call command line programming. It can be used for GUI programming. It can be used for a backend for websites, and it can be used for doing data analysis and visualization. And in fact, it's that field probably most notably that's really pushed Python the furthest. So in data analytics, I mean, if you kind of like don't know Python as a programming language, you're kind of not doing data analytics, is really what it comes down to. And so we start with the most fundamental aspects of this programming language. And what's cool about it is the concepts that you learn about programming in this class will transfer to any other programming class that you have, whether it's in the web program or later on in the data program when you learn the R language for doing data analysis. What you will discover, especially the web people, so most of you tend to be web people here, you'll see correlation. So if you happen to be also taking the Java programming class with me on Tuesdays, or took that one maybe in the fall, that's a possibility too, you'll see a lot of correlations between the language. Python is what we call an interpreted language, however, right? So it's not like Java, which is a compiled language, and it has some advantages because of that. It's a little bit more lightweight, and it's built to do things almost intuitively, is really kind of a fair way to say it. Now, in terms of the book that you need, this is listed here. This is also listed in Web Advisor. So I assume many of you already have the book. Is anybody here? How about let's do this? Can you guys please tell me if you have the book? So give me maybe a green check mark or a hand up or whatever. All right, great. Those of you that don't yet, you really want to make a point of getting it as quickly as possible. And I mean that with all sincerity, because once we get rolling with material, if you don't have the book, you will fall behind very quickly, right? So this is the fair warning. The nice thing is with this Python class, I have some stuff that I do up at the beginning of the course where you can, maybe the first week you can kind of skip the book, but really by next week you should have it. The fastest way, my recommended way to get the book is to get the electronic version. The electronic version, the e-text, has some really cool features to it, which I'll show you a little bit later, including the ability to edit and run code directly inside of the ebook. I want you to think about that, right? So the book gives you an example, and they're like, here, you try it. And then you type in your code or whatever and hit the run button, and it does it right inside the book. So that's really kind of a great way to reinforce the concept. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you rent or buy the e-version of the book, the electronic version, that you get it immediately when you pay for it. Whereas if you go to like Amazon or the bookstore or whatever and go to get the book, well, you have to make a trip to the bookstore, or you have to wait until Amazon ships it to you. What can happen in some classes, and this is probably won't be one of them, is by week 2 or 3, you're a few chapters in. Oh, I finally got my book, and you're already like 2 or 3 chapters behind. You don't want to be in that situation. So always get your books as early as possible. I do know that IT books can be expensive. This one isn't really that bad, but don't be surprised when you have IT classes where you get certain books and they are $200, $300, $400. You guys be prepared for that, because there's a lot of work that goes into making those books, right? And because of that, whenever I have a really expensive one, I make sure I use it pretty fully as well. This is a really well-written book. We researched quite a bit before we chose it, and I think you'll see why I like it so much. It's very nicely written, great examples, and great historical material too. In terms of required materials for the class, you basically need to have a modern computer system with internet access. And in terms of what constitutes a modern computer system, either a Windows PC, a Mac, or a Linux machine, preferably with like an i5 processor or better. I would recommend 16 gigs of RAM if you can afford it, and a 500 gig hard drive. One thing that's pretty important also is, if you do not have that level of equipment and you cannot afford to buy it for yourself, Gateway will give you the equipment to use for free, folks. So I want you to think about that for a second. All you have to do is ask me. You ask whatever instructor it is that's telling you that you need it, and we put in a request with our IT department, and usually by the next business day, it's in your hands. So that stands true for laptops for IT programs, and we have a higher echelon of laptop than other students on campus would get, because we have bigger requirements. Also, if you have a bad internet connection, right, Gateway will give you a free, cellular Wi-Fi hotspot to use at no cost. There is no cost for the equipment, right? Gateway received a huge federal grant to provide equipment for students in these situations because of the pandemic. All you have to do is just make your instructor aware. We will put in the request, and you will have the equipment quickly and promptly to do the work that you need to do. So don't just sit there if you don't have the right gear. For example, if you're on a Chromebook, right? I'm just kind of giving you a wake-up call. Chromebooks are not going to work for this class. You can't do your stuff on a Chromebook here. You can try. I've had people try, and yeah, they usually end up getting the school equipment. Right. In terms of the course competencies, Of course, competencies really are kind of, what we look at as the major topics that you're going to learn while you're in this course. So these are the things that I teach to and make sure that you learn. So when I finish a course, I look back at the list and I go, did I teach them how to do this, this, and this? Yes, I did. Right. And that's how I know that I've been successful. And it's always good to take a look at these things and how what you're expected to learn. So there's quite a bit here to look at, but pretty common for an intro level programming class. William, did you have a question? You are muted, William.
Do I really need a physical textbook and not an online one?
You can get, no, I actually recommend the online book over the physical one. Okay. Okay. I think that's clear. All right, folks. Now let's move to the section of the syllabus, which I think it gets pretty important in terms of being successful in the class, and that is understanding how we grade things, what the expectations are, what kind of work you're going to be doing, and the schedule for it. The first thing that's really critical, especially for a class in this format, everybody here, whether you signed up for Zoom or in person, you are required to come to class on a weekly basis. And coming to class, I do not, for example, take attendance. I don't have like a little attendance book, but I do kind of make note, so I'm noticing that I'm supposed to have 21 people here, but I don't have 21 people here. Now we know one person's in India going to probably junior high school, which we talked about. And I think there's just a couple of people missing, or they didn't understand the memo or whatever, that I was sending out, but you do need to be present. So I don't grade on attendance, but I do grade on participation, and you can't really participate unless you show up, right? And because you signed up for this format, we're expecting you to show up every week. So that becomes a pretty critical piece. You do earn points for showing up. Basically, if you come every week, you interact during class, do your homework, smile once in a while, whatever, you will basically earn all of your participation points. That's how I operate. If you don't do those things, you miss some classes, you don't turn in work, you don't communicate with me, you will see that those points start to come down for that particular thing. In terms of how I do the point breakdown, 15% of your total grade for this class will be for participation. Now, I set that up originally because we used to do 15 weeks and 15 points, and it worked out great, and now that we've switched to 14 weeks, I haven't had the heart to switch it to 14, so I just left it at 15. So you get 7 points for the first half of the course, 8 points for the second half of the course, following midterm. The remaining points that you will earn, 68% of those points will be in the forms of assignments. So your regular weekly assignments really account for most of the points you're going to earn. When you couple that with the fact, with participation, well, all of a sudden you're up in the 83% of the points that you're going to earn are just because showing up and doing your weekly homework. The remainder are the exams. So we do not have, we don't have any quizzes in here. So I should really probably alter this. This should probably just say exams. So we have a midterm exam and a final exam. And those points, roughly are split pretty equally. I think they're both 7.5 point exams, but the final exam also has a programming portion, which brings it up to 17. So the midterm exam will happen at roughly the halfway point in the semester. And then you get your midterm grade afterwards. And the midterm grades are just a temporary indicator of how you're doing. So it's not your permanent grade, doesn't stick on your record. And then when we get to the final exam, that will be comprehensive, covering everything from the whole course. And I expect all of you will have learned a whole bunch by the time we get to the end of April. And the other thing I do want to point out here, and I almost forgot to mention it, is when you start taking college classes, teachers not only have different kinds of Blackboard shells, but they have different ways in which they grade. And a lot of instructors have like what we call weighted grading systems. And let me explain what that means. That's where you sit down and you do, let's say, a homework assignment, and it's 100 points. And maybe you only get part of those, but whatever, but there's 100 points. Then you go and you take a test, that's 100 points. And then you go and you do something else, that's 100 points. But they all impact your grade on different ways. So for example, the test is worth more than the assignment. And so it is weighted more heavily. And that's not a system that I use. Some instructors do use that. And I found it very confusing when I was a student. I found it confusing when I became an instructor. And so I adopted kind of a unique grading system, which is basically what I call my 100-point system. That means there's 100 points on the table for the whole course. Each point is equivalent to 1% of your grade. So when you sit down and you have an assignment that's worth 5 points, like, I don't want to do this. Well, all right, the best you're going to get is a 95 in this class, right? And you do that a couple of times and all of a sudden your grade's coming down. So it becomes pretty important that every time you do a homework assignment, you go, oh, this is only 2 points or this is only 3 points, that you understand that those points are a direct reflection on the total that you earn. So the grand goal then really becomes to earn as many points as possible and optimally to receive at least 74 points in this class. Okay, so now why do I highlight that? Because here in the IT department, we have a policy that you have to earn a grade of C or better in any one of our program classes in order to have it count towards your degree, right? So you can get a C minus, financial aid doesn't care, but you know what? You're taking the course again if you get a C minus. That's not good enough. You have to get at least a C. And that becomes really critical. So as we kind of get towards the end of the course, what I typically do is I kind of keep an eye on things. And if I see you're maybe not going to reach that target, I'm going to start reaching out to you and say, hey, you better do this or you better do that. Let's talk and find ways to help you get to that point. The other thing that I do very profusely in this Python course is I offer a lot of extra credit opportunities. Almost every single unit has extra credit available, and that is to help bolster your score. So if you did an assignment and you bombed on it, or you didn't do great on the test, well, you can scarf up some extra credit and make up those points and make your score stronger. An extra credit doesn't have a due date, and therefore, as a result, you can take extra credit from, let's say, unit 1 and turn it in week 14, and that's totally fine, and take the points. So you have to get a C or better, which means you have to get to 74 points total. Going back to the exams and quizzes here, once again, we're going to do a midterm and a final. The tests are always based on materials from our textbook, so that will be the official repository of information. That's another reason why you have to have the book, right? The cool thing is, because we have a shortened schedule, partially, and also because I don't like to waste class time, we will not come to class like in the middle of the semester and like, okay, today is midterm day, take your test. That's not how I do it. You're going to do the tests on your own time, right? I will use that night as a regular teaching night, right? But here's the advantage. I give you a whole week's time frame in which you can take the test. The test will be taken directly on Blackboard. It is self-grading, so the moment that you're done, you know how many points you earned, and you can do your calculations. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. The midterm grade, I just want to kind of reiterate, is not a permanent part of your record. It's just an indicator of where you're at the moment. When it comes to turning in homework, and the first thing I'm going to tell you, and I want you guys to hear me very, very clearly on this, homework in this class is not optional, okay? So I get this misconception because I think there's been kind of a change in the high schools, and I hear this both from high school teachers and from students, where it's like, hey, you know what? I went to class and I really didn't do any of the homework because I totally got it, and then I did the midterm and the final and I got an A, so I got an A for the class. It does not work that way here, folks. Here, you're better off doing the homework and skipping the test, because all the points, I mean, if you looked at the percentages before, all the points are in the homework, right? And so homework is not optional. You have to complete the homework. our mission here at Gateway, and this is, I think, pretty important, is really we exist to train people to take the jobs that are available within our district. So that would be Racine, Kenosha, and Walworth counties. And there's lots and lots of programming positions available in our district, if you can believe it or not. And so our mission is to train you to take those positions. We talk to the employers, we know the skills they're looking for, and then we train you to have those skills. And part of the skill is showing up, right? You know, I mean, how are you gonna hire somebody or pay them money if they don't show up to do the work, right? Even if it's online. And we also train you how to functionally do the actual coding, not talk about doing the coding, but doing the coding, because that's what you're going to get paid for. And employers want people that show up and do what they're asked to do, and that's how you succeed, and that's how you make money. And here's kind of the really cool thing about this field, you guys. Whether you're going into data or web, there's so much work, they can't even possibly fill the positions. There's so many jobs available. And you know what? The rate of pay is insanely good. It's not unusual that once you get out into the field working, that you get up into the six-figure range really quickly in programming, you know, right? And you know what? And so I say this to the young people in particular, it's not unusual that you come in, get a 2-year degree, maybe find a job right away, maybe do a little bit more school, and you can be making more money than your parents in just a few years, right? And then maybe you can get them to come back to school. And believe it or not, that sounds like a silly story, but I've had exactly that happen. I've had people that have come into our programs, gotten jobs, and then their parents are like, I'm doing the same thing then. That's a great job, right? And so that's what we want to get you excited about, because if you work hard at this stuff, people will hire you because they just can't find enough people. They can't throw enough bodies at IT stuff. All right, so going back to the homework thing. Now, the first thing that you should know is for any assignment that I post out in Blackboard, it will have a due date attached to it. And in order to maximize your points, you do the work, do it accurately, and turn it in by that due date. That's how you're going to get the most points. If work is turned in late, you're going to receive a deduction in points. That's kind of the policy, right? Some common sense things, though, and this is, Brock, you're going to like notice that, and Aleko already knows this, that I kind of repeat myself when I do these lecture things, right? Like the first thing is like, if the due date for most homework is going to be at midnight of any given day, that's how instructors do it. So it's like, given the fact that this is a Thursday class, I usually set the homework that's due for next week, not for Thursday, but the Saturday following, to give you a couple extra days after class to finish things if you didn't finish it during class or needed some more time. If you miss that due date, let's say you're working on it, and it's like, oh man, I didn't make the midnight deadline. I turned it in at 12:30 a.m., right? Just give you a scenario. I'm probably not going to downgrade you, because I'm not sitting there at midnight waiting to grade your homework, folks, right? And it's kind of like horseshoes and hand grenades. A little bit, a couple hours late, or maybe even the next morning, I really don't care, right? That's not really very late. It's basically going to be there when I go to grade it. If you're in progress and you're not going to make the due date, but you got some of it done, then I have this policy here that if you're half done with your work, let's say, or ballpark, turn in what you have, let me know it's not done yet, and I will give you one more week without a late penalty. I see you've been working on it. See, that's kind of my thinking. And that way, if you're all stressed out because I got to work or the kids or the car or whatever, whatever your deal is, you don't have to stress. All right. The other thing that I will tell you is if any assignment is more than 2 weeks late, the most points you will earn is half of the points. I want you to kind of let that resonate a little bit. So if you get into this habit of turning in everything 2 weeks late or later, there is no way you're passing this class. You guys hear me? Right? It's just not happening, right? Because mathematically, it doesn't work out. Now, there is extra credit and stuff that we could probably work out, but the point is to keep you on track. Now, I will still take homework. So like, let's say we're in week 14 and you forgot to turn in your week 2 homework. I'll still take it, but you're only getting half the points. You're probably better off doing extra credit work at that point. But I put these systems in place to give you a safety net. The one thing that you have to be very careful about is as you take classes with different instructors have different policies. Some instructors, for example, and I know this is true in nursing, for example, it's like, okay, homework's due at midnight. You didn't turn it in, assignment's turned off, you can't turn it in anymore, sorry, patient is dead. you know you know and but in nursing it kind of makes sense, right? Because if you don't get like the IV in or give the procedure to the patient, they can die. In IT, we have Control Z. What's Control Z, folks? Undo. Right? Nurses don't they don't have a Control Z key to do an undo. IT people do. And so that's one of the beauties of IT, is we don't need to be quite as rigid as some other disciplines. But you can't count on the fact that you'll walk into the classroom with somebody else and they won't be super rigid about their assignments. And you know what? And rightly so. I could be that way too. College policy allows for it, but I know what happens when you learn how to program, because I went through it too, where I had to take some classes over again because I didn't get it the first time, right? And so really what happens is you start to feel overwhelmed when you start to learn coding, and it's okay to have that feeling. And it's okay to have the feeling that maybe you won't get it all at once, because sometimes it takes a little while for it to come into focus. You're kind of going through the steps of it and it's like, I did it and it works, but I don't understand what I'm doing. And then you go to your next class or a couple classes later, and it's like, oh, that's what I was doing. Ah, man, it totally makes sense now, and it's just a process. So don't ever feel like, oh man, I'm not getting this, I should quit. Understand that oh no, I'm not getting this is perfectly normal. And once you latch onto that and embrace it, you will be okay, because I will be here to help you. Gateway will be here to help you. Our tutors will be here to help you. We have so many support systems. There's so many ways that we are here to basically make you succeed. Really, the rest of it is really kind of up to you. And I'm hoping that you guys embrace it and go with it. One little thing that I also offer in my syllabus, and I won't mention this again, by the way, until probably like the second last week of class usually, is I have this get out of homework free coupon, which you can use one time to replace any regular assignment. And so this is kind of like this little goofy safety net that I put into my syllabi. Kind of stole this technique from one of my predecessors. And basically the reason we do this is, hey, sometimes people have, life happens, let's just say it politely. And, hey, my car broke down, I couldn't do the homework. You know what? I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to screenshot that coupon. I'm going to turn it in place of my assignment. And there's your points. You get 2 points for this maximum, but it's 2 points on the table, right? And then you will notice as we get to the end of the course that I kind of strategically have some assignments that are pretty low point values like that, so you can throw the coupon at it. I will remind you when we get to the end of the course, and you can only use the coupon once. Just follow the instructions here. Now, because we have been kind of operating in strange times, right? So the last couple of years have been pretty weird because of the pandemic, for most people. For IT, I'll be real frank with you guys, it was just another day. When the whole college got word when the pandemic hit, hey, we're closing down and everything's going on Zoom, the whole collective organization was like, oh my God, how do we do that? In IT, of course, especially in web, we've been doing it for 15 years, teaching in this format. And so it was like, oh, okay, we're just all on Zoom today instead of like half here and half there, and it was just another day. And really what a lot of us discovered is that Zoom for many of us is a better way, because look at all of you sitting at home right now. And me, I live up in Milwaukee. It takes me an hour to get to campus, back and forth. Well, at the IMAC campus, not quite so long. But that's all that time I don't have to spend. And I don't have to get like, all dressed up and showered and stop at McDonald's and Starbucks and, whatever the process is just to go to that class. Now I can spend that time maybe looking at the code a little bit more, or reading up a little bit more, or getting ready, or having a decent meal, or petting the dog, which makes me feel better, that kind of thing. And so for many of us in IT, we think this is better. And the reality is a lot of us who get hired in this field work remotely. Professional organizations are doing the same thing. It's like, why are we paying all this like Class A office space rent when we can just let the people sit at home and we can pay for their internet connection, and they're doing more work sitting at home than they are coming to the office. And that's really what we've discovered is productivity actually goes up when people work on Zoom. Now, despite that, the pandemic has really messed a lot of people up. People have had deaths in their immediate families, they get sick, they miss work, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why we have this incomplete policy. And so I need to talk about this because during the pandemic, we have given out probably more incompletes than we normally do because more stuff's been happening, bad stuff, unfortunately. So an incomplete really is designed so that if you are a good student proceeding in class and then something tragic happens, and through no fault of your own, like getting married or having kids. No, I'm kidding. That was a bad joke. I'm kidding. No, but actually, getting pregnant is one of those things, right? So I had one of my students last semester who was doing her capstone, the final course in the web program, and was pregnant. And so of course she had a few weeks where she couldn't come because she delivered, during the semester. And we were prepared to give her an incomplete. She did actually finish all her coursework and didn't need it. But every once in a while, stuff happens. And if that happens to you, that throws you off course through no fault of your own, talk to me. I mean, this is really the key thing. Communicate with me. We can always set up an incomplete if you fit the guidelines to give you a little bit more time to complete the work rather than have you fail or withdraw and then have to retake the course and pay for it again. But the key to that, and I want you guys to listen to it really carefully, is communication, right? So if you got something going on that's throwing you off course, I can help you out, but I can't help you if I don't know. If you do let me know, we have all sorts of systems at place at Gateway to help you out. If you're maybe stressed out because of the COVID thing, we have counselors, If you're not getting enough support from me with the coding during office hours or my free time, you can talk to the tutors, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have equipment, we'll give you equipment. We'll do whatever we can to make you succeed, but you have to let us know. If you don't let us know, we can't help you out. All right. The last thing that I'm going to talk about really, I guess, in depth here is this grading policies thing, kind of rifle through these bullets. Some of them are pretty common sense, and I think I mentioned them already. First of all, attending class is not optional, right? So you guys signed up for a version of the class, Zoom or in person. You're supposed to be there every week. And frankly, if you're paying for it or if your employer's paying for it, be there, or if the federal government's paying for it, through like loans and grants or whatever, be there, take advantage of it. School is a gift, in other countries, people don't always get that gift, and you guys should take advantage for sure. Homework is not optional. You have to complete the homework to earn the points and to earn enough points to pass the class. There's no way to do it without doing the homework. Do not assume that taking a test and getting an A on it is going to give you an A in the course. Not happening, right? Not happening at all. If you do your work well, you get all your points. If you mess things up a little bit, or it's a little bit late, or it's not turned in quite right, you will lose a little bit of points. But often what I will do is I'll say, hey, you didn't do this part quite right. Can you fix it and turn it back in? I'll give you the rest of the points. And often if I'm giving you that option, there's no late penalty attached either, right? So let's say the first couple of weeks, it's like, oh, this is how you wanted me to do it. I'm sorry. All right, well, I fixed it. Here it is. Fine. The point is that you get it right. That's ultimately the goal. And I say here, you may be allowed to resubmit work for an improved score. And the way that I notify you is in the comments on your grades. I will show you that in the grade book. If you do have questions about any of the grades that you receive, I ask that you do let me know as soon as you spot the problem. So sometimes I screw up, right? So like I'm thinking that I graded it correctly, and you're like, you said I didn't do number 5, but number 5 is right here. Right here it is. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. So let me know. I'm not infallible. I do make mistakes. I am human. If you feel like you got the wrong grade, let me know. Also, make sure that you check those light work policies. That get it in on time is important. If it's partially complete and you turn it in on time, you have more time to work on it with no late penalty. And don't go past 2 weeks turning anything in, because that's not a good recipe for success. Another thing that I will be doing in this class, and we're going to do it basically every week following this one, is we're going to start every class session with a Kahoot. Do you guys know what a Kahoot is? All right, so I see a couple people nodding. Basically what it is, it's like an online interactive live quiz challenge. So I basically will throw questions up on the screen, usually right from the book. And sometimes there's like a true or false, or like a multiple choice ABCD kind of thing. And you have usually about 20 or 30 seconds to respond. And if you get the question correct and you're fast at answering, you can potentially win the Kahoot. Usually I do about like 10 questions in a Kahoot, and I'll start every class session with it. And the point of it is to reinforce the materials you should have read and the videos you should have watched coming into class. And it's also kind of my way of like lecturing a little bit without using a PowerPoint. It's a lot more fun, and I think a lot more effective, right? The fun part is anybody who wins a Kahoot, so any given week, right? So there's 14 weeks, there's 14 points on the table. Whoever wins the Kahoot for the day gets an extra credit point. And so those, if you're good at Kahoots, you can, hey, maybe cancel out an assignment or two. I'm just kind of putting it out there. And part of it is also to kind of like bring a little fun into the classroom and kind of make it a little bit more lighthearted. Because school can feel like too serious sometimes, and I always hated that when I was a student. All right, so be prepared for Kahoots. The Kahoots will happen right at the beginning of the class. So like a minute or two after class starts, the Kahoots happen. So if you're not on time to class, guess what? You can't participate, right? You don't have a chance to win. So it's another way of getting me to get you in your seat faster, basically, or online faster. All right. Finally, we have these two sections here, and then our boilerplate college policies. First are all the key dates for the course. So we will have our regular meetings Thursday night, 7:50 to 9:50. I know that's a pretty late time slot in the day for some people, especially if you have, work in the morning, or, you're up early. But what you will notice for both the data program and for the web program, that most of our classes, especially as you work your way through the program, are only offered in the evenings. The web program, the 2-year version, is an evening program. The data analytics program is an evening program, and so be prepared for that. There will be times where I might scroll over a few minutes, and usually it's because I'm coding and I want to finish the thing I'm working on. If you have to leave right at 9:50 because you have somewhere to be, go. That's kind of what I tell people. If you want to hang out for a few minutes, while I'm recording the solution to an exercise problem, hang out, for a few minutes. That should be pretty rare, in my estimation. We start here today on January 20th, finish on April 21st. The financial aid census date is basically a milestone for, you have to basically be signed into the course by that date, so on Blackboard. Otherwise, you can potentially lose your financial aid. So it's like, it's really to kind of stop people from kind of scamming the school for money, basically. If you want to voluntarily drop and receive some form of prorated refund for the course, you have up until February 4th to voluntarily drop the course yourself. After that, if I have noticed that you haven't signed into Blackboard or done any work or communicated or acknowledged the syllabus, etc., I have the option to drop people during this 1 week time frame here. An option I exercise pretty rarely, but it does happen. Our midterm grades will post the day after March 4th. So usually it's the Saturday morning following the week of instruction, midterm grades will post. If you look at the calendar down here, we'll be through chapter 3 going into chapter 4 at that point. when we get to the midterm. If you choose at some point to voluntarily withdraw from the course, you have until the end of March to do so. And if you're curious about what the difference is between dropping and withdrawing, a withdrawal is really kind of a mechanism. Like, let's say you're taking the course and, you know, whatever is going on in your life, you're like off course, you're not doing your stuff, you're probably not going to pass, and you realize that. First of all, you should talk to me. And secondly, if you're deciding you don't want to finish up the course, choose to withdraw by that date, and on your college transcript you get a W for the grade as opposed to an F. The W has no impact on GPA. The F has a big impact on GPA. And it's just kind of a wise approach. And normally what I do is when we get around that date, I'm starting to look at people and going, you might want to withdraw, or either that or ramp things up and get on the stick and get things turned in. Now, this calendar that we're looking at here on the page, this is something that is also available in Blackboard, and I will show you where that is, but it's kind of like a quick overview snapshot of all the assignments, the sequence of the chapters, all the extra credit, and the point values, and at least at this point in time, what the due date is for those assignments. So if you go into Blackboard, all the due dates should match this, although I strongly suggest that you always check Blackboard for the due dates, because sometimes I do adjust them. It just depends on our progress in the classroom. This should be pretty accurate though. From here on down, we have what I call the standard college policies. The thing that you should know about this section is they all come from the Gateway Student Handbook, which is linked up here. And then all of these titles, which talk briefly about, you know, any given policy, are also direct links to the handbook with this information. You know, and, you know, kind of in brief, don't cheat or plagiarize, don't do drugs on campus, come to class, don't bring guns, you know, use technology responsibly. And then we have all the support mechanisms that are listed here at the bottom. One I usually like to point out pretty strongly is the fact that we do have what we call our disability services department. And I always say that I hate the word disability in there, but really what this points to is our tutoring center. So if you have, you know, the need for extra academic support, we have IT tutors on site, most of which have gone through the very same classes you have and can help you kind of like get through the material and get through the homework. Very cool people that work there, by the way. So I strongly, you know, suggest if you need tutoring help to reach out to them. All right, that covers the syllabus, folks. And so what I would like to do next is take us back to the course shell and then point you here to this link here in the left sidebar. And then once we do this, we will take a break, by the way. So I normally take a break about halfway through the class. I'd like you to go to this discussion board link in Blackboard, and then inside the discussion board, you will notice, and I see at least I have one person that responded here already, that there's a forum created here called Syllabus Acknowledgement. I'll zoom in just a little bit so you can see it a little more clearly. And what I need you to do is click on that. And then when you get in here, I need you to do what Rebecca did, which is to create a thread. And to create a thread, you come up to this button right here, which doesn't kind of really look like a button, but I assure you it is as you hover over it. You click Create Thread, and then you will type a subject, and you could just type, you know, syllabus or something like that. And then down here in the editing box, you can give me a message like, I read the syllabus and I will obey your every command. I will, and I understand, maybe it's enough. Right, so that's kind of my standard joke. Brock, you're picking up on that? That's my standard joke. No, all right. And then you just hit that submit button and it will post to the forum, and then I will see it. Now here's the disclaimer. The syllabus is kind of like an informal contract between myself, Gateway, and you as students, like what we're going to teach you, the policies that we're using, that we're going to abide by, and the systems we have in place. I will not grade any of your other homework until you complete this. You do earn points actually for doing this, and if I think it's a whole point for doing it. So when you guys get a chance, come in here, create a thread, and just tell me that you received the syllabus and that you have read it. and then we can proceed from there. So right now it's 9:01, a little more than halfway through the course. I am going to mute myself and I'm going to step away from the screen for 5 minutes. And, folks, I encourage you to do the same. One problem that we have in IT is a lot of IT people lead sedentary lifestyles, which is not very healthy. So get up and walk around, take the dog for a walk, go to the bathroom, get a beverage, stretch, do some jumping jacks, whatever, makes you smile. But get up out of that chair, even just for a few seconds. It is, let's see what actual time it is. All right, so let's call it 9:02. I'll be back here at 9:07 to resume. So 5-minute break, folks.